Welcome to the show, All Things Writing. I am your host, Brian the Writer. Let me take you on a journey through my writing life and introduce you to some of the amazing talent that exists in the writing world. Whether you are looking for a little advice or just to catch an interesting interview, sit back, relax, and enjoy the show. All Things Writing starts now. Hello, friends, and welcome to All Things Writing. I am your host, Brian the Writer. I'm so glad you could join me today. Actually, today is kind of a special sort of interview. We're doing something that I don't normally get the chance to do. I don't often get the chance to do. I've done it in the past, but not as often as I probably should or probably like to do. Today, I have a special guest on who is a poet. And I know that traditionally in the past, I've said I'm not a huge fan of poetry. It's actually not that I don't like poetry. It's just I kind of like the long form flowing story. But I know lots of people love poetry. When I go to shows and I'm set up as the killer bee with my friend Brian Grover, we tend to he sells us poetry books and they do quite well. So I certainly understand why people like them. Anyway, today on the show, I have for you a very special guest, a friend of mine, a guy I've known for quite some time. I knew him from the Horror Writers Association. I know him from the Northern Virginia Writers Club. Mr. Darius Jones. Darius has a new book out that I think you'll all find very interesting. It's called The Book of Hours. I've read through some of the wonderful poetry in here. I think it's very, very good. There's something in here kind of for everybody, a little mystical, pretty, some things that make you think. I think it's really what the purpose of poetry is really to make you think. But I don't know. The reason I don't know is, to be quite honest, I'm not hugely steeped in poetry. But I'll tell you what, instead of me talking about it, why don't we welcome to the show Mr. Darius Jones. Darius, welcome to All Things Writing.
I'm glad to be here. Thanks for having me.
I always say, I appreciate people coming on because without guests, it would be kind of a boring show. I think you just be me talking. Actually, I did a couple shows recently, or I'm doing a couple shows now where I'm just doing it's like real-time editing and real-time writing, and I'm explaining why I do what I do. I don't know. I think it might be interesting. It might not be. I don't know. People may hate it. Who knows? Anyway, so before we dive in, why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Well, my name's Darius Jones. I write, I guess I'll call it cosmic horror, dark fantasy. Sometimes I call it transcendental horror because it's kind of a horror that's it goes so far out, or it has so much depth that it kind of transcends and lifts you up again. I think I like to write horror with a kind of a wide palette of emotions. So that's kind of what I do. But I've written all kinds of different things. I've written even a little bit of historical fiction. Mm-hmm. Lately, I've drifted more into poetry, which my poetry tends to be a blend of dark fantasy. Maybe it's primarily fantasy, dark fantasy, and some horror elements in it. So it's more blended that way. So that's basically what I do, what I write.
So I like to say that I've never been a huge poetry guy, but it's really funny because when I read truly great poetry, it gets an emotional response from me. And I'm very fascinated by poetry, but I think really I struggle to put words into why I'm fascinated by it. What is it in your mind that kind of attracts people to poetry?
It's funny. I get that response a lot from people when I do signings and that sort of thing. It's that they'll say, I don't like poetry. I don't, it's not something I do or read. And then I kind of talk to them a little bit about it and say, it's changing a lot. It's changed a lot. I think it's becoming more accessible. And then, I talk about how my stuff is horror poetry and cosmic horror poetry. And dark fantasy poetry, and then they kind of their ears prick up a little bit, and I start talking to them about my poems about the pharaoh or my poems about black holes and different things like that, and they're like, oh, that's kind of different. So I think it's I don't know. I think yeah, I'm hoping more people take a chance on poetry, obviously, and kind
Yeah.
of open themselves up to it a little bit and realize it's not this kind of. I think our introduction to it, a lot of us, is in high school and maybe
Yeah.
Shakespeare or maybe some very old things,
Hmm.
and it kind of strikes you as academic or I don't know, overly wrought or pompous or whatever it is, and I think I think that's a little bit wrongheaded, and I hope that people kind of are open to it, open to trying different things, open to different things. And I've many times I've had people say this to me, and then it's turned into a sale, or it's turned into like, oh wow, that's really cool. I'm going to check that out.
Hmm.
So I think once people get into it and they start reading it, they'll see something really different from what they remembered in high school or whatever it was, undergrad, whatever.
You say that. The funny thing is that I always go back to high school. We had one of our English lit teachers who got me kind of into the written horror
Hmm.
by reading. She would read to us I want to say it was like every Friday. She'd read to us for like 30 minutes, and it was my favorite time of the week. And it's kind of fun to find a high school teacher still willing to read to her students.
Yeah,
But she read to us from the thing that got me was the bells.
yeah, sure,
The bells, and the way she read it with such a passionate flair.
yeah.
Uh, Man, that that stuck with me, and it's never really left me. I don't think, but I think you've got I think you have a. That's really interesting that what you say about people coming up to you at the table and you talk
Yeah.
to them about your poetry. Is there a poem, by the way, that you point out to them? Is there like a favorite poem that you go, see, this is the story I read to people when I want to introduce them to who I am.
Boy, yeah, that's a tough question. I mean, um, I kind of start maybe with my very first poem that got published,
Mhm.
"King Becomes a Star." That was published in Strange Horizons. It's the first poem I ever, as an adult, I
Mhm.
ever completed, and I liked. And it's really um, about a pharaoh, a historical pharaoh, Pharaoh Yunus, who had all these scribes and things like this. And I just kind of imagined him, the conceit or what they wished for was to be, brought back to life, to have eternal life, right?
Mhm.
And they had all these scribes and priests that would help them achieve this
Mhm.
in various ways, physical and spiritual and all that. And I just wondered what would happen if they actually were able to achieve that. How would they go about doing that? So there's a
Mhm.
lot of like there's some history in there, ancient Egyptian stuff. There's, resurrection. He basically fights these different demons every hour of the night, and then at dawn he's resurrected. So there's a lot of dark fantasy, resurrection. There's a lot of cosmology, like going
Mhm.
into how different stars and nebula and all that stuff behave in reality.
Mhm.
I think that captures a lot of who I am and what I want to do in my poems,
Mhm.
and a lot of different influences. And it's all haiku, actually. It's
Oh,
all
cool.
Japanese form about the ancient, pharaoh and how he's fighting these different demons as he goes through the different parts of the universe, basically. That was a really fun thing to write. It was a really cool experience. I think it has a lot of what I want to achieve in poetry.
Mhm.
Um, so I don't know. That might be a good place to start, and I think that's still out there on Strange
Mhm.
Horizons website. So yeah,
Cool. Uh, what got you started on horror?
boy, how much time do we have? I mean, I need to ask you that same question one of these days. Actually,
Yeah.
I'd be fascinated by that answer. What got me started?
Mine's actually quite a bit. Mine's actually fairly simple. My mom raised me on a steady diet of horror, classic horror movies.
There you go. I mean, there are a lot of signposts along the way. Um, like a lot of kids, we did. I think in eighth grade, eighth grade. I think we read Edgar Allan Poe,
Yeah.
Cask of Amontillado. That blew my mind. We
Oh,
got into some of his poems. But
that's
you know,
still
even
one of my favorites, by the way.
oh yeah, it's one of the most perfectly realized short stories. Period.
Yeah. Yeah.
Cask of Amontillado, from its opening line to the very end.
Yeah.
But you know, before that, and this is a story I've mentioned elsewhere. When I was in first grade, um, there was this book fair at our first book fair at our school. I remember at Loma Vista, and I had been to the library a number of times, you know, already as 6 or 7 year old, and I found it a magical place, but I couldn't. Everyone was getting excited about this book fair, and I was like, "What is this?" And I kind of went to it and realized there are all these books, but we could actually take these books home, and we would never have to return them; they would be ours. And that just blew my little mind, I
Yeah.
think. And I remember to this day, I picked up two books there.
Mm.
One was, I think, an early version of Where's Waldo kind of
Oh,
thing.
wow. Yeah.
Something kind of like that, where he was hiding in these big, huge pictures and you had to find him. And the other was classic movie monsters. And it was really
Oh,
the
yeah.
universal monsters,
Mm.
starting with Phantom of the Opera,
Yeah.
Dracula, Frankenstein, Bride of Frankenstein, Blackula. I mean, you name it. Black Lagoon, Creature of the Black Lagoon. And I bought that, and it was an amazing book because not only to give you a little bit of the history of the movies in a very first, second grade reading level way, but then it had this other section where it would show you how you could become a monster and how you could do with a simple like flashlight up or
Yeah.
down. You could do simple makeup, and you could become something like the Phantom of the Opera or Frankenstein. Show these really simple steps, and it was. There was that first kind of thought, I think, of like, oh, wow, not only can we consume these things, can we be audience members, but there are people who make and create this.
Yeah.
And so it was this beginning of, for us, I know, in our little street, our cul-de-sac, of actually holding haunted houses
Mhm.
that our parents let us do. And I mean, we charge the neighborhood kids, I don't know, like a 10 cents
Nickel
or
or
a
something.
quarter,
Yeah.
whatever it was. And we'd get old Halloween masks and other things like this, and let them in and do some of these kind of tricks and things. So that, I think, maybe was a very early sign. And there's a lot more to it, but I kind of returned to that, and I kind of returned to Lon Chaney actually
Oh,
later
yeah.
in life.
Yeah.
And I remember seeing him when I moved back to DC. There used to be these great silent movie sessions, silent movies in Eastern Market. I don't think they do it anymore.
Yeah.
But I remember going there, and I was like, oh, they're going to have Phantom of the Opera or something. I wasn't Phantom. Yeah, it was maybe. And they were going to have these Lon Chaney films. So I went there, and I was blown away to see him on the big screen. As impressive it is on your TV, it's even more impressive on the big screen. And it really got me thinking again about horror. Horror is high art, kind of. And that was about the time I really started seriously writing again as an adult. So there was a whole journey with this, Anyway.
I just remembered a couple of years ago, I went and saw Whatever Happened to Baby Jane on the big screen at the Alamo or something like that. And what a phenomenal old movie. I love that. But so we both dabble in horror, and I've said to people that want to know more about horror that a lot of it lives in suggestion rather than spectacle. We could all do the jump scares, but that can be overdone, and there's a time and a place for it. But what is it about poetry as a form that you feel makes it a little bit more intimate or unsettling than prose? You kind of hit on it a little bit earlier, but I wanted to go back to it.
I think it's visceral, and there's a hawk. I don't know if you're recording live, but there's a hawk outside my window enjoying a feast right now. Something that's caught. I don't know if that's a horror omen or what it is, but there's these feathers kind of raining down. And
hey, the hawk's getting his. I mean,
yeah.
horrors,
Oh, there he goes. I think he heard me or something. Anyway, boy,
That's what I'm having for dinner. I mean,
I couldn't not mention that. Any rate, horror poetry. I think as a versus horror prose, I think is what you're kind of getting at, right?
yeah.
I think I don't know. I think it's hard for me to catch kind of horror poetry. I get it fairly rarely, but when I do, I think it's good. I think it it does get to the emotion a lot quicker.
Mm-hmm.
It's hard to kind of um, to to do it in the way that you do it in prose. In prose, you always have to be so careful. I think horror is all about plotting a lot of times to me. It's got
Yeah.
to be there's got to be a good idea, but you got to plot it correctly and you got
Yeah.
to build that tension like ratchet it
Mm-hmm.
up. And then in poetry, that's all kind of thrown away mostly. And you've just got to introduce because you don't have time to do it. You
No.
just got to introduce the idea, have it there and have it grow and then just have this kind of sense of eeriness or the uncanny from the get-go. Um,
Yeah.
and that's usually what I go for in my poems is kind of the
Mm-hmm.
uncanny, the surreal, the unsettling, and that's a tone you have to get, in that first line, and then maintain it the whole way, and maybe even extend it a bit. So it's
Mm-hmm.
it's an utterly different medium, different technique than prose. Absolutely.
Yeah. I always think of the reason, I do write short stories, but I don't write a ton of them because I like the buildup. I enjoy the buildup. I enjoy writing the buildup. But I just read a book recently that I actually put down, and I don't put down a lot of books. I won't mention the name. I'm not going to ding another author on this, but
Yeah.
the problem I had with the book is I started reading it, and um, they just didn't get anywhere all that quick. And I'm like,
Yeah.
but I picked up another book and I'm reading that now. And I'm like, yeah, that's what I need right there. I want to be off. But poetry's that way too. I need to know within those first couple of lines that we're going somewhere.
Yeah. Yeah. I agree. And I agree whether it's a short story or um, a novel in horror. I need to. I do like the slow burn, but I have to get in the first like two or three paragraphs. I have to get the promise of something that's fundamentally not right, fundamentally
Yeah.
wrong or off, and then I have that interest of why is that? Why how did that happen to this town or
Yeah.
this household or this person?
Mhm.
And how is that going to resolve? And I think in a poem you have even less time to do that to kind of set the tone
You've got a
and
line or two.
yeah, you got a line or two. You got to bring them in and show them this kind of different world. Um, I do like though also one of the techniques I use quite a bit, and it's another thing I kind of picked up from Japanese poetry, especially haiku. It's associated with haiku. It's called the
Mhm.
cutting phrase, and
Okay.
it means that the last line of a haiku or the last line of a poem means that you kind of do this sword chop almost, this
Hmm.
definitive thing where you kind of make the reader realize that what you presented to them was all false or all wrong, or that there's
Hmm.
a whole different world that hooks into this, um, this poem that you didn't suspect. And that is something I really try and use in my horror fantasy poetry is to kind of, and sometimes I use it almost as like a trick, a misdirection kind of
Hmm.
have people think that this poem it's got to be about this. It's about this. It's about this. And it's like, oh, wait a minute. No, that last line completely re-racks the
Hmm.
whole 30 or 40, 50 lines that went before. So,
You mentioned something earlier that I thought was really interesting. We we talked about how writing, or you mentioned how fast or quickly things have to take. But I think readers will sometimes say that poetry sort of slows them down a little bit,
yeah.
in a way that other genres really don't. But do you think that the forced pause is part of why horror poetry sort of lingers in the mind long after you've read those last words?
Well, I hope so. I think you're right. I That's an intriguing question to me because it's funny because in a certain sense you'd think poetry is a lot quicker because
Hmm.
it's shorter, it's just a line, just read it, go. But yeah, it's designed to kind of maybe slow you down a bit, take a break from your day, or maybe make you think of something completely different or see things that you've seen a million times in a
Hmm.
different way. So I think in that sense, it's right. You're right about it. Um, but it's also really interesting to me, and I'm starting to find this out with things I'm doing. I was really like, poetry. What? It's so old fashioned. I think people just have that gut reaction, like we've kind of
Hmm.
talked about, of like, oh,
Yeah.
that's so stuffy and old school. That's not me. That's not what I like. Um, but from another point of view, it's a very modern. It has the potential, I think, to be a very modern thing because it's spoken word.
Hmm.
It's coming right into where you're sitting, in the theater, in the audience, with
Hmm.
your headphones on your commute, maybe on social media, and it's very short. It's you could do quite a bit of poems in your daily commute, or even
Sure.
in between scrolling things.
Yeah.
So I'm actually starting to find more and more on Instagram. I've just started up my own YouTube, lately.
Nice.
That
Nice.
it it it's a medium that's old but new again, and that it's lending itself to new audiences and
Hmm.
new ways of being consumed, and I think that can only help it. I
Yeah.
really do.
Yeah. 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 It's funny you mentioned that whenever our friend Brian Grover and I go someplace, we're the Killer Bees,
Yep,
and he has some horror poetry and some other short
he does.
stories, um and it's a lot of fun how many people pick it up and do just like we hope you do with this book here, by the way, the Book of Hours. I'll make sure and put a link at the end so people see it. But
Okay, thank you.
now, horror poetry does not always rely on sort of the traditional monsters. I know you like these the internal fear, the cosmic unease, and that kind of thing. Um, why do those resonate with readers as well as it does?
Uh, I do sometimes write monsters in my
Hmm.
poems, a little bit here and there. In that book, there's Shineback, which is kind of about a monster. He doesn't realize it until the very end, of course.
Hmm.
Um, but there are also just, I don't know, numinous kind of things and creatures. Sometimes they're animals and that sort of thing. I think, I don't know, I'm not sure exactly. I mean, one of the poems that people love the most that I've written is about a worm,
Hmm.
celestial worm, and it's basically about this worm going through the sky and eating stars and nebula and all that kind of stuff, and how that kind of is similar to the earthworm.
Hmm.
And I think animals in particular have some kind of a pull on people. They've always had a pull on people, and they've always
Hmm.
had this kind of mystical, sometimes dark, sometimes horror, sometimes fantasy, sometimes light kind of pull on people. I mean, the ancient Egyptians are a great example of that too, with all their so many of their gods and goddesses are
Sure.
mashups of animals and that sort of thing. There's lots of
Anubis springs to mind. Yeah.
yeah, tons of them, and also just in world folklore and mythology. Think of all the magical animals and that sort of thing, and
Hmm.
um, I think somehow that's deep within our psyche,
Hmm.
um, and to some extent plants too. I'm writing about trees now and stuff that they have more of a personality
Hmm.
than we grant them,
Hmm.
and I definitely the ancient people thought that way, but I think modern people think that way to some extent from a more scientific point of view, um, which you can see today with all this like, oh, we're looking again at all these animals that are using tools, and oh yeah, it's not just chimpanzees and gorillas, it's birds and cows now, and all these animals. So maybe they're a bit closer. So um, I think you're plugging into a lot of these kind of deep subconscious things, whether it's animals, other living beings, forces of nature, storms, wind, weather, geology. And I think you're kind of taking those and you're kind of pushing them one way or pushing them the other way into these realms of horror and fantasy. And that resonates with people because it's always resonated with people.
Mm-hmm.
It's not that different from 5 or 10,000 years ago. It still resonates with people.
Sure.
And yeah, some of the most passionate, good or bad, responses I've got from my poetry have been about nature, especially about other living beings, about animals, plants, that sort of thing. It's only natural to me.
I was just thinking about this idea of cosmic horror, that kind of darkness of space, that never-ending feeling of, and I think it does give people a little bit of pause, a little bit of dread when you think about the cosmos, leaving the atmosphere, going out into space. And, we, there are parts of our own planet that we don't know that much about. And those seem to be great settings for horror. It's that fear of the unknown that I think always gets people.
Yeah. I just had a new poem out. It's called The Conquering Pine. It's also with Alien Buddha Press. And it's kind of about a pine tree that's, sentient and starts controlling or controlling these other species around it. And that was a really fun idea to explore too. That's another example of some of these ideas and creatures,
Completely off topic here. Viewers, sorry, I have to ask this question. Have you ever watched the movie Rubber?
No.
Okay, you need to watch the movie Rubber. It is a very, very, and people are going to slam me for this, but it is probably one of the weirdest movies I've ever seen. It's one of those movies that's, on one hand, it's terrible, and on another hand, it's brilliant. It's about a telekinetically sentient tire that starts killing people. Yep.
There you go.
It is a fantastic movie. You'll get to the end and you'll go, what did I just watch? And then you'll be thinking about it for the next 2 months. You're going to watch the movie. You're going to call me and say, why? Just why? Just why? Anyway, your sentient tree made me think about it. But I understand, and you hint on it, and we talked about it a little bit. Poetry can feel intimidating to some people. I think there's this mindset where you have to be this cultured person to understand poetry, and I absolutely don't think that's true. What do you think draws in your readers, especially those who, and you'll know this from working behind the table like I do, what brings your readers into your particular brand of poetry? In particular, what's going to bring them into the Book of Hours?
I think what brings them into the Book of Hours, and that's my latest poetry book. Actually my first poetry collection out from Alien Buddha Press. You can get it on Amazon, other places. I think what brings them into it is, like I said, when I'm at these tables and I say it's dark cosmic poetry, it's horror poetry, it's some dark fantasy poetry. I think people have in their minds what that is, and they're like, oh, I like horror, I like fantasy, dark fantasy stuff, or deep space cosmological type stuff with this kind of horror sheen to it or fantasy sheen to it. And I think but they're thinking that's the prose I like, but then I'm like, okay, so you like that, let's build on that horror dark fantasy foundation. And now this is just, it's a simple book, it's not that expensive, it's really short, it's a very low commitment. Just crack it open, read a poem or two, see if you like it. And, like I said, by the end of that 30-second pitch like that, there are a lot of people are like, oh yeah, I do like this stuff. I've never really read poetry that's that stuff too. Let me give it a shot. And they end up, walking away with it more often than not. And And then there are other people who I think come the other way, who are more poets or into poetry. And they're like, oh, I know. So those are the people who are like, oh, I know what poetry is. I know what I like in poetry, right? And I don't like horror. I don't like fantasy. I like poetry. And they kind of get hooked in, like, oh, why don't you try this poetry? And then they read it and they're like, well, that's not exactly what I normally read in poetry or normally like in poetry. But that's different. It's different from the poems that I've been reading. So let me take a shot at that. So it's kind of coming from both angles. You know what I mean? So
yeah. It's really funny. I put together a short story collection last year because I wanted to have a new book out, and I didn't have anything new coming out, so I put this thing together.
Yep.
And I can't keep it in stock. I can't. Every show I go to, I just sell it in spades. And I think there is currently a big interest in these shorter chunks of reading, and poetry leads itself really well. I was flipping through here while you were talking about, I was flipping through some of these different poems in here, just out of curiosity, just to see, like, how if we could talk about how long some of them are versus how short some of them are. But if you don't mind, if I have your permission, I'd like to read one of them.
Sure.
A short one.
Okay.
Moonlight Palm Tree.
Perfect.
Moonlight palm thrushes, whispers and speaks, sighing of immortality.
Yeah.
That's it.
That's it. It's a haiku, actually. It's I mean, there's a lot of debate about what makes a pure haiku, but it's inspired by haiku. And that was one of, I asked my niece, actually, I got her the book, which is kind of a funny story in itself. I'll tell you quickly, but I got her the book and I asked her what she liked out of there. And she picked one of these that was very, one was based on a corporate grind job. And other one was that palm tree one. And I was like, that's a rather grim one for someone who's 11 years old to pick. But she liked it. I liked it too. That was inspired by, I forget where it was. I think I might have been actually in Japan, in Okinawa, looking up and seeing a palm tree, kind of just whispering or whatever, thrushing in the night sky. So yeah, they're really short. They kind of, I think, get in a different mood or mode. What I designed this book to do, the Book of Hours to do, and that title is based off of medieval Book of Hours, which monastic orders wrote. For each hour of the night, they'd have a different prayer or liturgy or whatever. And so that's why I chose this, and that's why there are 24 poems in it. So there's one for different each hour. And I wanted people, and I know some of the readers have done this actually now, to just kind of have it there, by their bedstand or by their, computer, their, at home office or wherever, and just pick it up at different hours of the day and just read one poem. Just
I love it.
Yeah, contribute. I'm going to dedicate 2 minutes of my life, a minute of my life. I'm going to read one of these, and then put it away. And then do the same thing the next day or the next week or whatever, and just have a different kind of thought or mood, and have that, come to you. That poem, the one about the moonlight and the palm, it's very kind of just dense, somber one, but there are horror ones. There are ones that I think evoke awe or wonder. There's I think 24 different emotions in this book too.
So my favorite one in here is symmetry.
Oh, really? Okay.
I like symmetry a lot. Can I read it?
Yeah, sure. It's been out there and published elsewhere. So yeah, absolutely.
I always like to say on all things writing, we do not do spoilers. So that's why I always ask. Symmetry. Where time runs backward and cause and effect are reversed. A place doomed to begin where the past lies undiscovered, and detailed maps of the future are laid out end to end. where the residents dread their inescapable origins, fear onrushing birth, and celebrate their avoidable deaths.
Very, very good.
I love that. That is that there's like the thing about the thrushes, that like the poem about the thrushes, there's a lot to unpack there. If you just sit there and that's what I like to do. I'll read through a poem once and then I'll go back and I'll reread each section.
Yeah.
And I'll try and dive further into the meaning, and the best poems kick open doors that I didn't even know were closed in my mind when I read it through it the first time. And that's what I think makes these poems so impactful.
Well, my work here is done, Brian.
Well, so you're going to be at AuthorCon this year, yes? Are you
I don't know. I committed to another event just before that. So
okay.
I probably won't.
Well, that's okay. You'll be missed. I always do AuthorCon. I love AuthorCon.
I'm going to make it a tradition very soon, I feel.
Oh, it's one of my favorite events all year.
I've heard that from so many people. I've never been, so I need to get there.
Yeah. But let's say I'm at a show and I'm walking down the aisle and I see a giant banner that says, "Come meet Darius Jones." And I say, "Oh, Darius Jones, I've always wanted to meet him." So I come up and I pick up the book of hours and I go, "Whoa. Now give me your table speech on as if I'm a new customer. I've never seen this before. I'm walking up to your table for the first time. What are you going to tell me?" Go.
And you tell me that you don't read poetry, which they almost always do.
Yes.
I'll be like, well, this is it's very short poems. They have a dark cosmic horror or a dark fantasy vibe. The main one is about the Egyptian pharaoh and how he has to combat these different demons as he journeys to resurrection. And then there are many others in here. And it got a great review from my friend Mercedes Yardley, who's a 3-time Stoker winner. So you can read all about it here and show them the blurb on the back. And they usually go, "Oh, that's cool." Yeah. And that's about it. And then I kind of flip through it or tell them, so that's my very rough speech. But I practice it more when I'm in the signing season. Yeah. And it's much more polished and crisp. But that's it. That's basically it. And that will, if they approach me, if they kind of pick it up, that will result in a sale about 70-80% of the time.
Yeah. So I've kept statistics. I have not kept fresh statistics, but a couple times I've gone to shows and I've just sort of made like little marks to let me know. If I have somebody stop by the table and they pick up my book and they flip it over and they read the back, it's about 75% of the time they'll buy it.
Yep. Yeah.
That's the power of the back matter, I guess.
Yeah. I even had at a recent signing, this was so funny. I had this couple come up to me and they're like, "What's your book about?" And I gave that 30-second spiel about cosmic horror poetry. And the woman said to me, "Oh, yeah, that sounds really interesting, cool. I think I'll get that." And she was like, "Don't you think that's interesting, honey, or dear, or whatever?" He's like, "Yeah, it's okay, I guess." And she bought it. That was that. They both disappear, walk away. I'm like, okay, cool. I got a sale out of that.
Yeah.
And I swear, 15 to 20 minutes later, it's like Jaws. It's like shark out there. There's this guy, and he's at the very far end. He's going this way. He's circling back. He's circling back between the tables. He's getting closer and closer. Da-da-da-da-da-da-da. And he's like, "Hey, Darius." I'm like, "Oh, hey." He's like, I can I get a copy of your book? And I'm like, "Sure, absolutely." And he's like, and I'll sign up for your newsletter too. And I'm like, "Great." So it's funny.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I've had instances where people came up and they did not look like they would be readers. Yeah. And then they buy a copy of everything. And so I've learned not to judge. I just don't judge anymore because you have no way of knowing, honestly.
Yeah, no, I've had people walk in the store. They're kind of wearing like some really deep cut of horror or
Yeah.
some kind of goth music, kind of industrial T-shirt, and I'm like, oh yeah, this is going to
And
work.
you'd think those are my people. And
Yeah, just what? Don't even notice you.
yeah.
And then you have somebody who's like, just I don't know, just wearing jeans, a T-shirt, just not nothing that would signal that they would be interested in horror, dark fantasy, or whatever. And they're like, hey, what's this about? And then walk out with it. So,
I actually sold to a guy one time who literally said nothing. He came
Really?
in, he looked at all the books, he left, and came back with his wife, as it turns out. Like, I don't know, maybe like 10 minutes later. And he just like waved to the table. And she said to me, he'll take one of each.
wow, that's
And
really
I
cool.
said, okay. And I must have looked kind of shocked because she said, well, he's an over the road trucker and he doesn't watch TV. He doesn't like TV. So
Okay.
he reads. So I come to these shows and we come and he tells me what he wants and I buy them and he's got his books that he takes on the road with him. Like, that is so cool.
That's
But he
really
never said a word to me. It was a little weird. But anyway, so where can people find the Book of Hours?
Yeah. You can get.
I feel like I should get close and say the Book of Hours.
Thank you so much.
Yeah.
Well, you can get the Book of Hours on Amazon. Is probably the easiest way to get it. It's just it's there. Buy it. You'll get a copy. If you really want to, there are also ways to contact me on social media, say Facebook, Instagram. I'm on those. You can direct DM me, and I can send you a copy, a signed copy. In fact, I can mail it to you.
Mhm.
So that's also another possible distribution method if you want to go that extra level and get a signed copy, which I can send to definitely anywhere in the States. I haven't sent it abroad yet, but I'm sure I could in some way. So those are really the two ways to get it: Amazon
Nice.
or contact.
Nice. Yeah. I can highly recommend the Book of Hours to those who have an interest in poetry. Either get it online or come join Darius at a show. Any of the shows he's at, I'm sure he'll post on social media as where he's going to be. We all do. You got to know where to find us. It's important.
Yeah.
But I will post a link at the end so that people know where to find this book, the Book of Hours. Like I said, highly recommended. A lot of fun, and good stuff. It's just good stuff.
Yeah, thank you. Can I ask you a question?
Sure. I don't
Will
get asked questions very often.
Have I turned you on a little bit to dark poetry, to horror poetry? And might you, if you found a collection out there by somebody else, would you be more likely to consider it or think about it? Or
Oh, sure. Absolutely. Well, so I'm probably not a great person to ask that question to because I hang out with Brian Grover all the time. So
that's true.
I've listened to him. Yeah, I've listened to him do poetry. He'll go to like shows and then he'll read poetry for panels and whatnot, and it's very enjoyable. And I do like horror poetry more so than I would like any other variety of poem because, well, first of all, I'm a horror guy, but second of all, I think there's a depth there. You can go a lot of different directions. I was thinking about the poem "The Bells."
Yeah,
"The Bells" is a great poem, and there are so many intriguing ways to look at that poem.
Yeah.
As you read it, and that's what I think you get out of horror poems, horror short stories. You get a little bit of a different view of the world. So
yeah, and just I'll do one other plug of where you can find me. I live in Alexandria, Virginia, so I do read my poems around quite a bit. St. Elmo's has a open mic in Alexandria. I go there. And other areas around too. I'll be doing readings. And you can find all of those either follow me on Instagram at Darius Jones Writ. That's Darius Jones WRIT on Instagram. Or on my website, I really have a good link under appearances, and that's DariusJonesWriter.com.
Occasionally, you can find us out at Elaine's as well in
Out
Old
at the
Town
lanes
Exotic.
in Old Town, Alexandria. I've done a show there with you, actually.
Yeah. Not only is it a great place to meet authors and talk about books, but their food is fantastic as well.
Oh yeah,
they make a great old fashioned, by the way.
Oh, do they? I haven't had that.
I'm an old fashioned kind of guy.
I am too.
Yeah.
I am too.
I do tend to like my bourbon anyway.
I'm going to have one of those next time I'm there.
Well, Darius, it's been a pleasure. Thank you so much for hanging out with me. I really appreciate it.
Hey, likewise. I had a great time. Let's do this again one of these days.
Oh, absolutely. And anytime you've got a book coming out, or I think this year for October, I'm going to try and get a horror panel together to talk about horror writing, horror related stuff. I just need to figure out the logistics and how I get everybody into the show with me here. But great fun. Well, for you, my wonderful listeners, viewers, thank you so much for hanging out with us today. I hope you really enjoyed it. Please run out and buy a copy of the Book of Hours. Grab a copy. I'm telling you what, it's well worth it. It's a lot of fun. Little bite-sized pieces for you to digest and think about, and a few of those stories I can guarantee will be floating around your brain even after you've closed the book for the night. So on behalf of All Things Writing, this is Brian the Writer saying thank you so much for joining us. Darius, again, thank you so much for hanging out with us.
Thanks for having me.
And this is All Things Writing, signing off. This has been another amazing episode of All Things Writing. If you heard something that got your wheels spinning, check out the links in the show notes. Also, please follow the show and remember to leave those reviews. Those simple acts of kindness mean the world to us. Hop on over to briannowak.com, and that is Brian with a Y, and check out my latest novels. I'm on Amazon or wherever you buy your ebooks. And as a reminder, the music you heard on the show today was used under license from the artist Ryan Ancona. Thanks for listening to the show and have a blessed day.